Hello there, Jennifer McCreath. I was going to write a blog about this, but I'm too lazy to type, so I just thought I'd turn the camera on. Today is October 10th, 2012. About 6 months ago, the Human Rights Commission of Ontario ruled that it was a violation of human rights to require surgical procedures for trans people to amend their legal documents in terms of identifying their sex. 6 months later, they've come up with a policy on, I guess, exactly how people can go about applying for and amending said records. Well-known trans advocate and blogger Christin Milloy has written a critique of this new policy, suggesting that while this may help some, the fact that there's 5 certain criteria that you must meet makes it challenging for many. I'm going to start with bullet number 3, because Kristin's blog says the title is New Ontario Legal Sex Change Requirements, a Huge Disappointment for Most Trans People. Trans with an asterisk, meaning an all-inclusive trans community. Most, some, half. I guess it really depends on your definition of most and in your definition of trans people. First and foremost, this only applies to people who are born in Ontario. If your birth certificate is a provincial matter here in Canada, and if you want to change your birth certificate, it's something you'll have to take up with your province of birth, regardless of where you live. So, as someone who was born in Nova Scotia, this policy does not directly affect me in any way. However, I will point out that what happens in Ontario sets the tone in many policies, not just in transgender issues, but the Ontario government literally they're world leaders in a lot of things they do in terms of innovative concepts. So believe me, folks, what's going on in Ontario right now is going to be looked at by all the other provinces, and it will set a precedent for when time comes for them to jump on board. So keep in mind Ontario, keep in mind trans advocates, keep in mind everybody that what you do in Ontario somehow has an effect on trans people like myself, born in Nova Scotia, currently living in Newfoundland. So first, yeah, I agree. If you're a trans person who lives in Ontario, who was not born in Ontario, too bad for you. You cannot apply for this. Are you a pre-op, post-op, or non-op trans person? I guess if you weren't considering a sex change on your birth certificate, chances are you're not somehow part of the trans community. Binary is a critical question that comes up and has been looked at. Binary meaning 2. Many of us in the trans community will tell you that gender is not binary. It's a spectrum or a gray area, and we have masculine and feminine qualities, and someone who wishes to undergo some sort of transition, there's a variety of how far they can go with their transition, and so this policy requires binary involvement at the gender presentation level in order to have notification changed for sex. So for example, if it were me, someone who was born male, grew up as a boy, living life as a man for a while, realizing I need to become female, much like the standards of care as they were written in 2001, requires a binary change. If you want sex reassignment surgery, you need to demonstrate a complete switch in gender roles living 24/7, and I guess that's essentially what they're looking for here. Secondly, I will point out this is a very unique precedent. For years, government has always considered gender and sex to be the same thing. This is, in my understanding, the first time anywhere in Canada that this is not the case. We're now talking about classifying potentially males as women
and females as men. And that's at least a step in the right direction. At least you don't have to, if you don't feel you need the surgery, you don't have to follow it that far. Can you afford $97? Yeah, that's a lot of money. However, in my case, my transition cost over $50,000 to $60,000, including surgical bills. So those of you who don't feel you need surgery, feel fortunate, because that's a lot of money you won't have to spend. I'll throw this in as someone who was identified as operative from the beginning. Changing my ID instead of having surgery was not applicable at all. I needed the surgery, I knew it, I got it. End of story. I'm actually concerned that this will lead to myths that you do not need to have the surgery because now you can change your ID. That is not going to solve the problem for anyone who needs the surgery or any surgeries. So let's be careful, advocates, that you don't throw us surgical folks under the bus all the time. Make it clear that this is not the perfect solution for everyone. What else do we got here? Currently supervised by a doctor or psychologist who is officially recognized and supports the gender identity. Absolutely. That's a serious challenge. Finding doctors willing to take on trans patients and recognize their real-life experience, test, and document it in a letter. There's one particular gender identity clinic in Ontario that seems to have gotten some support as of late among Toronto trans people after many, many years of being considered cruel, out-of-date quacks. The folks running CAMH, and Christin mentions that CAMH perhaps was involved in the consultation process here. She also makes reference to a couple other groups, Trans Lobby Group, which is a Toronto-based trans organization that I'm aware of, specifically has one member. The other one is, never heard of them, to be honest. Ontario, Queer Ontario. Where is it here? Queer Ontario. Okay. Don't know who they are. Gotta be honest. Never heard of them. Okay. What works for a trans person in Toronto might not work for trans people in other parts of Ontario. If you live in Thunder Bay, if you live in Pickle Lake, if you live in Kenora, heck, even if you live in Cornwall or Ottawa, going to CAMH to get attention, one, there's waiting lists, two, there's travel costs. We need to eliminate this myth that CAMH is the only place in the world that can treat trans people and that can classify trans people and recommend surgeries and recommend fundings. Any doctor can do this. Us folks out here in Newfoundland, well, we've got legislation that's very old that says CAMH is the only place that can help us and recommend government funding for any type of treatment we might need. We need to take steps. Any doctor can treat a trans person. Any doctor, I said any doctor. And still, they need to be convinced that, one, they can do this, and two, that they're willing to do this. So yeah, finding a doctor that can write those letters for you, yeah, that could take a while. I think the biggest issue here is binary, because, well, they kind of go together, really. In my case, now we do have new standards of care that came out last year that it doesn't specifically reference binary gender transition anymore. It references the term must undergo real-life experience in a gender presentation they feel comfortable with. Still, in terms of government documentation, again, we can call it gender, but it's really sex. It doesn't say man or woman on birth certificate. It says male or female. I'll throw in the word intersexed. If you were born with both or neither primary sex organs and primary sex glands, then what do you do and how do you change? That's a whole other can of worms. Is this progress? I think it is. It's at least a small step forward. It's definitely not a step backward, I'll say that. Is it perfect? No. What percentage of trans people will not be able to take advantage of this opportunity? I honestly have no idea. What else do we have here? Okay, if you don't have a doctor's note, you can present your case to the government directly on what's supposedly a case-by-case basis. So there's a very interesting one. I guess this could set a very interesting precedent. For the very first time, government will be asked directly to assess transsexualism, gender dysphoria, and perhaps classify someone. Christin mentions that she's intending to do this, to walk in without doctor's notes and ask to have this change done. And I think that's a very interesting case study, because for the very first time, government officials will be asked to assess whether or not Christin should have her identification changed. And either way, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, because I can't see how they could do this without involving what they feel they need in the policy is some sort of medical professional opinion. Do we as individuals have a right to self-identify? Absolutely. I don't need, and I never needed doctors to label me and tell me what I am or what I need to do. I knew exactly, when I figured this out, I knew exactly what I needed to do. And I essentially told doctors, I need you to sign these letters to help me get through my transitions. So, yeah, some people are criticizing Christin for being overly harsh. Someone's got to do it. There's a lot of people celebrating. Of course, political groups that have been involved with trans rights are going to try to claim that they did all the work on this. But no, we need to remember, baby steps, but there's still a long way to go. Critical to engage the right stakeholders. Don't just talk to one or two trans people in Toronto. Talk to trans people, find trans people all over your province, because obviously it's going to be very different depending on what part of the province you live in, and network with other provinces and other trans people. I lived in Ontario for 24 years, and I didn't see anyone give me a call on this consultation, so there you go. Anyway, those are my initial rambling, random thoughts on this. I didn't have a lot of time to really prepare this, but 13 minutes. Oh well, there you go. Hope you all enjoyed the video. And Christin, you keep up the great blogging. Take care, everybody.